Hi, we're here with Brittany Masters and John Sepp from Roam Free, and we're really excited to have a conversation today about both your ranch and the regenerative practices that you're employing, as well as your delicious bison bites, which I have always loved and that we've loved at Bumbleroot and are now selling on the Bumbleroot website. We've known each other for a while now and have been able to come out to the ranch, which is so fun. And just it's so amazing to see in person the difference that your practices and your work have created on the land. And just love to get into how did you get started? How did you get started in bison ranching and developing the Roam Free brand?
Yeah, so thanks for doing this, Sarah. We're really excited to be a part of your new marketplace. Thanks for choosing us. And yeah, thanks for being so interested in our ranch. So
Yeah.
Actually, John started the ranch.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of talk about how?
Sure. Yeah. In 2014, I got out of the Air Force, and I had been in for 9 years. But during the time that I was in, I was preparing. I knew that when I got out that I wanted to be, involved in agriculture and specifically raising bison. I've just always wanted to do that since I was, a little kid. And so I had saved, and when I got out, I had put down money on the first 240 acres that we started on here near Hot Springs. And
And that's in Montana.
That's in Montana, yeah. Hot Springs, Montana, sorry. Yep. And so since that time, we've grown to a little over 10,000 acres now. And we are growing the herd with that. And specifically why regenerative, I guess, well, I mean, really, it's hard to do one, and you can't really do one and or the other with bison. Bison, in my opinion, are a regenerative animal. Of course, you could raise them in a way that doesn't benefit the land, but if you remain a grass-fed producer, which we are, a lot of the way that they graze and move, you don't have to build the same type of infrastructure that you might with if you're doing a beef operation. But to us, we don't want to just, really the regenerative model revolves around bison being chased by wolves to give grass rest and to, keep them moving so that the grass has a new opportunity to activate its defense mechanism once it is eaten to grow more roots that are stronger and trap more soil. And so we don't want to, because we don't have wolves and we don't want to just allow the bison to move themselves, we do build a lot of fencing and try to optimize that and use that fencing to mimic that movement with the bison, the grass, and the lack of wolves that we have now. We can't just have them running all over the ranch, right? So we certainly don't stop them. We have a predator-friendly model here at the ranch that we employ. But that being said, the wolf population now is just not what it was. So that's a long way to say bison and regenerative do go hand in hand, and we work to optimize that. We view it a little bit as our responsibility. It's something that we love doing. We feel like we want to steward the land that we have in the best way possible. And, that's kind of the ethos that drives our brand and what we produce in a food product too, which is what we're producing. We want to be the very best food product possible. We eat very healthy and we try to eat very clean, and we're very particular about our protein that we eat. And Brittany can tell you a lot more about bison and the protein portion, but what you're eating is a direct reflection of how it's raised. And so that's a very important thing for us to focus on.
That's great. And we want to hear about the product. And before that, can I ask you to talk a little bit more about grassland specifically, and what regenerative agriculture means in terms of grasslands? I know our grasslands across the world are endangered. And like I mentioned, I've personally seen how your land is moving away from land that was starting the process of desertification into a land that's having more diverse grasses, is more lush, healthier soil. And can you just talk a little bit about that for a lot of our customers who might not be familiar with endangered grasslands and what it means to have animals moving on them and why that is important?
Yeah, so grasslands in North America are the #1 most endangered ecosystem. I don't think a lot of people really know that. And they used to make up a large portion of North America, and today that ecosystem, we only have 1% of it really left intact, and that 1% is in Montana. So we have something really, really special right, underneath our feet here that we really believe that it's our duty to preserve. And bison are a keystone species of that ecosystem, so they do a really good job at restoring it. Once you bring the bison back, you start to see other things come back as well. And we are also adding more to that equation just to speed things up. We're reseeding, like John was talking about. We're doing rotational grazing. We're monitoring our soil and our water, all to make sure that what we have on the land next year is better than what we have this year.
And just to add to that, with having the animals on the land, bison on the land, like you're doing, you're in making the soil healthier, which means it's retaining more water, more carbon, and keeps adding, like you mentioned, to biodiversity and a greater ecosystem as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a lifelong project. It's not something that happens overnight, regeneration, but even in a few years since we've been doing it, we're seeing much more higher diversity of plant species, and that's indicative of the more diverse sort of microorganisms in the soil.
And like you mentioned, you've also created a super clean, amazing bison bite with all whole ingredients, which we love at Bumble Root. Always like to say ingredients that come from a plant rather than from a lab, or from an animal rather than from a lab. And can you tell us a little bit about the creation of those and why it's important for you to have such a authentic and clean product?
Yeah, so we formulated the recipes. We're not chefs or meat scientists, but I do have a little bit of a nutrition background. And before I joined John out at the ranch, actually, I was doing a lot of travel. I traveled for work, about 75% of the time. And I never really trusted the meat and or the products that I could get, in a convenience store or in the airport. And so I just made a product that I wanted to eat, something that I could trust, that I could feel good about eating. It didn't sort of slow me down. And there wasn't any good meat products out there that I knew of at the time. And so, we really try to limit our sugar intake. We try to eat just, whole real ingredients and, not eat anything. We don't want anything in our product that we wouldn't want to put in our bodies. So that's sort of the inspiration behind it. And it doesn't really need anything else, it doesn't need all those fillers. It doesn't need, any sugar. Bison tastes delicious. It's naturally a little sweet. And so we just wanted to highlight that rather than some of the other ingredients.
And can you talk a little bit about the nutritional benefits of bison, and specifically grass-fed bison versus conventional meat products?
Yeah. So bison is a red meat, and it is leaner than chicken or fish. So it is super lean, and of the fat that it does have, it's going to be higher in omega-3s to omega-6s. So it has a really good ratio, and then it's just packed full of nutrients. So B12, iron, all the vitamins and minerals that you want in a meat source. It's the most nutrient dense actual protein on the planet. So it's a great option for a meal substitute or just a snack on the go.
And they're delicious. And
it tastes good too. So there you go.
And I think one thing that, we've been saying a lot here, but people might not realize why it's so important, is your product is very distinct in that it is a grass-fed bison product. And can you tell us a little bit about the bison industry as a whole and the niche of grass-fed, and why grass-fed versus grain-fed, which a lot of the bison industry is?
It's a real challenge to raise bison in a grass-fed setting, mostly because you need a lot of room. You need a lot of land. You know, they're a huge animal. I mean, any ruminant, you need a lot of land to have grass, to have them truly be a grass-fed animal. Unfortunately, just the way that our land usage and agricultural system is set up, and the the history of bison, you know, we used to have 80 million of them roaming the plains, and that number in the late 1800s was less than 300 total left alive. And so, you know, the ranchers that did take on stewarding and trying to bring back the animal, you know, there's only so much you can do with such a bottleneck and so few animals to grow the herd so fast. So today we're only at about 400,000 in all of North America, and 200,000 bison in the United States, which is a very tiny number compared to the amount of beef cows that we have. And it's just because of that fluctuation in population and the way we set up our land. You know, really, we stole that from the bison, put cows on it, and the infrastructure change just doesn't happen overnight. So the reason why I'm talking about that is because approximately 95% of those 200,000 bison are grain fed in smaller confined areas, because there's simply not enough grass that's allocated for those bison to be raised on pure grass. Land is always ever more increasingly expensive in the United States, and that slow comeback of bison has forced producers to try to compete with beef and be efficient. And really the only way you can do that, unless you're trying to be very creative, is putting them in a grain-fed setting. So it's unfortunate that you know, for our health, that exists. We really wanted to specialize and raise bison the way that we believe they should be raised, and it just means we have to work that much harder to do it. I feel like a lot of grain-fed producers would do that if they could. It's just financially, it's almost impossible, right? So that's why we have this value-added product. And people are always curious, you know, they say, well, if there's so few of them and you're trying to bring them back, why would you eat them? And the real reason is 99% of them are still privately owned. If it wasn't for private ranchers owning them, they would disappear as a species. There's not enough land, and there's not enough animals in federal lands within Yellowstone, etc., for the animal to actually even survive genetically. So these producers are still important because they're preserving those genetics in tighter areas, but we are striving to set the next bar, which is keeping bison on grass like they should be roaming over a large area. But it's expensive, it's difficult, it's a big undertaking for us, and the product is only one half. The ranch is another large, you know, the other half of our business. So.
And what's your vision for both the bison industry going into the future, say in the next 25 years, as well as regenerative agriculture as a whole? What is your vision for both your ranch, your company, the industry as a whole, and regenerative agriculture as a whole? What do you hope to see?
So the really exciting part is that consumers are getting behind this idea of grass-fed, regenerative. You know, they're seeking out those, you know, regenerative producers, and that makes all the difference. That's really what is changing sort of the landscape of our food system, is those people that are voting, you know, with their wallet for the products and the sort of world that they want to have. And so that's exciting. And where I think that the bison industry and just the regenerative protein industry is going, especially in the U.S., is, you know, the supply chain is starting to catch up. You know, buyers are starting to seek more of these products, and the processors and the manufacturers are, you know, opening up room for us to process. And so that's exciting. And I don't think it's something that's happening overnight, but we're just, you know, not letting the foot off the gas, because, you know, there's there's a lot of change happening, and the small wins are really important.
Yeah. And just our overall goal really is to see more bison, especially in the West. It's just the native grasses that were here that affect weather patterns, that affect moisture. It has such a sweeping effect on everything in the West. The bison was the keystone species that created those grasslands and then maintained them. So, our vision for the future, in all of what Brittany said, is to see more bison, and we want to see areas where other producers are taking on this grass-fed approach. But that what Brittany was saying, I think, is that it requires the consumer to come along with it, because this is a very expensive and difficult endeavor and very risky for us. And so without that support of consumers that also equally care about what they're eating and putting in their body, this would not be possible. So our vision is to see consumers more educated, and because I think they care just as much as we do, and that enables producers to grow this, what we're trying to do here, to grow that model more, and we hope to see more of that. It would just benefit everybody.
Definitely. And if people are wanting to dig in more, to learn more about bison or regenerative agriculture, are there certain books or videos or podcasts that you'd recommend to them?
I think, maybe you want to talk about bison specific. We've had Nicole Masters out to the ranch. Sarah, you were there, and I think she has a really just gift in how she explains soil and science and really complicated things really simply, that people can understand, even if you're not in agriculture, you're not a rancher or a scientist. So I would definitely dig into some of her research. And
her book is called For the Love of Soil, her most recent book. We can put a link to that
on my desk. Yeah, so that's a great resource. Do you have any bison specific? I really enjoy the Western Sustainability Exchange and some of their workshops that they've been facilitating. Of course, right now everything's sort of all virtual, but when those kick off again, they're really, really great resources.
Yeah. I can't, there's not necessarily anything that's bison specific that anybody has written, I should say, about bison being regenerative. But I feel like as a whole, most people, when you see them write books about, because there's lots of books about regenerative agriculture out there, it's about beef cows being regenerative. And a lot of that is trying to tell the story of how do you take a beef cow and make it like a bison. All those books, any regenerative book that you read or article, is taking beef cows and making them like bison. So it's their behavior, really what you're studying in all of those. So I'd say any history book or any book on bison behavior is really the fundamental basis for all the other regenerative books that people are putting together. And regenerative isn't the same in every place. This is mostly specific to the American West, right? When you look west of the Mississippi. So if you go overseas or you go east, the grass environment and how those ecosystems thrived was very different, and than what exists out here.
Yeah.
And where can people find you? I know you have a beautiful Instagram account, Instagram website. Where can people learn more about Roam Free?
Yeah, so our Instagram and Facebook is at Go Roam Free, and then GoRoamFree.com. We're putting together a lot of great content right now, actually. So I'll have some new videos and possibly a blog coming soon.
Great. Well,
we also love to, I'll say one more thing too. We, not right now in this current environment with the coronavirus, but we do host quite a number of people throughout the summers to come out to the ranch, mostly in volunteering form, but also just visitors. So if people are interested in saying, what does that really mean? We just are finishing a bunkhouse here on the ranch, and you can find us on the website woof.com. It's WWOOF.com, and you can sign up on there, and it's free, and you come out and we feed you and all that. So that's also another way people can learn.
Thank you for adding that, and just highly recommend anyone who has the chance to do that. I've been out a number of times, and it's always great to, first of all, just visit and see both of you, but also to see the progress with the ranch and to see the bison. It's just amazing to wake up in the morning and have a bison herd running by outside the window. There's really nothing like it.
Yeah, there's nothing like knowing, really, really where your food comes from. Like right there, right in front of your face. Pretty cool.
Definitely. Well, thank you for everything that both of you are doing. And we're so excited to have you on the marketplace. And we'll be in touch soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Miss you. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.